that's what an hourly caregiver can do. The economics, the cost has risen tremendously, unfortunately. Back before the pandemic, the hourly rate was $22, $24, maybe $25 an hour. Again, I give a range because some home care agencies are a little different in the pricing. Today, the market is roughly, the range is $35 to $42 an hour. It was trending at 35. Again, you might find a home care agency at $35 an hour, but it's like $37 to $42 an hour. And you can see how the costs from 5, 6, 7 years ago have tremendously gone up. The second type of caregiver is a living caregiver, and it's exactly what it means. A living is 24/7. Again, 24/7 meaning that they don't work 24 hours a day. Again, we have to follow the labor laws. They're allowed to have their own sleep, their own private room, etc. But they do the same thing as an hourly caregiver. And you might say, well, why hourly versus living? It varies. Reasoning. Hourly, if there's two 12-hour shifts, and if you do the math at $35, $40 an hour versus a living, it might be cost beneficial to have a living, you know. And then also the care is a little different as well, having a living caregiver. But the living market back then was roughly $225 to $250 a day. And that's not including, you know, a stipend for meals. But today, the market changed, and on the low end, $350, but it's close to $400 a day. So if you do, you know, hard numbers, $400 a day times 30 days, that's $12,000. Everybody's so quiet. I told you it's tough to take in, but you know, me personally, I think it's all expensive, but there's ways of planning. You know, I don't know if any of you have long-term care insurance, but that's one option. I don't know if anyone here is a veteran. You know, there's that aid and attendance pension that's available. You know, and not just for the veteran, but also for the spouse is entitled to that pension. As long as they are still married and not divorced, that pension is still viable to the spouse. So that's something to think about. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me about talking about things like that. But that's on the home care side, living at home. The next option would be assisted living, right? And I just want to make this perfectly clear. I know sometimes I get a phone call from a family, they'll say, oh, my loved one doesn't want to go to assisted living because it's a hospital setting, and it's not. I think I mentioned Randolph resident, Morristown resident, and we have a lot of assisted living communities in our neighborhood, right? Not far from here, scattered all over. And they're basically, assisted living are basically a beautiful hotel, right? We'll get into that, right? A beautiful cruise ship. Aesthetically, they're beautiful. Some are brand new, and they're just gorgeous. And then you have the mature ones. They're still very nice, but very homey, you know? So that's one of the things that when we talk to our clients, what they're looking for, we kind of know where to go with them. But on the assisted living side, they provide all the meals, right? The activities, the snacks, entertainment. Again, beautiful hotel, beautiful cruise ship. There's pros and cons to all these different places, and we go over that with our clients. But they have the certified nursing assistants, similar to home health aides. You know, they provide also the activities of daily living, medication management. They have a nursing team. Healthcare healthcare professionals come in, medical doctor, podiatrist, ophthalmologist, you name it, they come in, they have psychologists. So they have a nice range of healthcare professionals that come in. But in the assisted living world, there's different types of setting. The rooms are studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. You know, so the more real estate there is, the more expensive it's going to be, right? So the cost for, and I'm going to give you a range because every company is different, you know. So the cost is anywhere, starting for a studio, could be anywhere from like low 4,000 to maybe 6,000 or so. And I give you that range because there's different companies with different costs, right? Cost structure. A 1 bedroom can be 6,000 to 8,000, roughly. And then a 2 bedroom can be anywhere from 8 to 10. And that's for one individual, right? If a spouse is there as well, then there's a second person fee, and typically that's about $2,000. That's for the meals, the activities, and all the amenities, right? And what I just mentioned was just the room rate. I didn't even talk about personal care, which is the activities of daily living, and medication management. So we sometimes have, you know, families that we work with that they're independent. They still drive. They just want to be in a nice area. They like the social activities, but don't need the personal care and medication management. Medication management can roughly be about, again, depends on the nurse's assessment, about $1,500 to $3,000 or more per month. So if you take, and I'll give you an example, if you take a studio that's roughly $5,000 and add another $3,000 for care. Now, that's $8,000, but again, and I say this, it depends on the individual. Everyone is different depending on that assessment. So, any questions so far? I think everyone's like shell-shocked. So, in the assisted living world, community, I should say, there is a memory care section, and it's very important that there is one, because you just never know, especially if there's a spouse involved, you just never know in life, right? I mean, you could be living there for 10, 15 years, and something, you know, they have to go to a memory care unit section. The cost there is anywhere from 10 to 14,000, and it's a specialty. And that, when I say the cost is 10 to 14, that's all inclusive. The room rate, medication management, and the personal care. What I've seen now, depending on the company, the assisted living community, I'm starting to see bundled, where they have all inclusive, which I like personally. You know, it's not like the a la carte. I like that bundled, and I think there's value there. So not everyone is doing that, but there are certain companies that we work with that I've seen. So that's the assisted living. Next is skilled nursing home. And nursing home, and we have a few in our area, right? Nursing home is basically, you know, you have a room with a roommate, and it has that hospital setting, right? You share the restroom. Let me just back up. In the assisted living world, someone can stay in place to the very end. You know, they can come in independent, graduate with, you know, care, medication management, etc., and stay there to the end. A lot of places, some places I should say, allow like a Hoyer lift. A Hoyer lift is it's an equipment, it's a mechanism that helps individuals transfer from the bed to a wheelchair if need be. You know, not every assisted living company will allow that, but there are certain ones that do, and they do an excellent job of tucking it away, that Hoyer lift. Whenever I tour, I point out certain companies that we tour with and say, look, that's a Hoyer lift, and look at how it's tucked away. It doesn't look like it's skilled nursing, you know? So that's important to know. But the only thing that an assisted living is not able to do is that's more of a skilled function, and that's where skilled nursing comes into play. Skilled nursing is also very expensive, even though it feels that like that hospital setting, it's not as nice as an assisted living, right? And it varies. It can be anywhere from $11,000 to $16,000 a month, and it varies by the actual company. There's some nicer ones, and there's some that are okay, you know. But that's the range. It's $11,000 to $16,000. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. One thing that I didn't talk about is that on the skilled nursing side, the spend down of the assets. So usually the spend down, meaning that you have to privately pay monthly a minimum of 1 year in the assisted living. Now some folks may have several years and you continue spending down until you can go on to Medicaid. But same thing with the assisted living side. Here in New Jersey, 99% is 2 years spend down. There are some that are 3 years spend down, and those are the companies that are like brand new, you know. I don't know why they do that, they just do. But 2 years is the normal spend down. And we've had clients that have 5 years, 7 years worth of spend down until they are eligible for a Medicaid, and they can remain there, you know. So 2 years is a spend down. Again, it's monthly. It's not that you turn over 2 years worth of assets to meet that requirement. You just pay monthly. And, you know, families will ask, well, do you sign a lease? No, it's month to month here in New Jersey. So if someone wants to give notice, they just have to give 30 days notice. So I typically tell families, you know, there's got to be a good reason why you're giving notice. If your loved one is there for a year, well, you already spent down 1 year's worth of assets. So you have to be careful if you only have 2 years worth of assets, because you already spent down 1 year, you have 1 year left. Where another assisted living company is not going to accept it, you know, so you have to be careful with that. Any questions? Yes?
Aside from people that are looking at these different facilities, because we're going to have our own individual needs, how do you evaluate the different facilities that are around in the area? Not just as sort of the type, but the
Yeah.
quality of the care.
Yeah. So the question is, how do I evaluate the different types of assisted living communities that are out there, especially in our area, right? It really depends on well, first of all, let me just start. All the companies that we tour with, these are good companies. Is there a perfect company? Absolutely not. I don't care what industry someone is in. There's pros and cons to every different assisted living. But that's when I do the intake with the family, gather that information, we know like where to go, like what's appropriate for our client, you know. Now, there are a lot of good assisted living companies out there. I mean, we have so many out there. Sunrise is the largest in the state of New Jersey, and then Arbor in Morristown, Hospital just recently opened up 7-8 years ago now. But there's so many different ones out there. With the family, I look at it, you know, with the care is number one. If they need a lot of care, and then also the budget is important. I use the term, you know, there's the Taj Mahal type of assisted living companies out there, and I'm not going to mention names, but those are the ones that are the new communities that were recently built. But there's nothing wrong with the ones that have been out there for 20 years. They've been renovated, they're beautiful. So it's care and also on the financial side. I will say this, the ones that are newer are more expensive. It's just the way it is. It's just like in real estate, you go to a building that has a community that has brand new condos, well, there's a premium for that. Same thing on the assisted living side. Hopefully that answers your question, yeah. Are you happy?
Is it part of the assessment to determine if there's a need for medication management, or is that just given in an assisted living facility that you have your medications managed?
So I think you're referring to the nurse's assessment.
Yeah.
So, the question is, part of the nurse's assessment is medication management, part of that. In the state of New Jersey, all assisted living companies have to have a nurse either come out or they can bring their loved one to the community to be assessed. It's a requirement. So they basically, the assessment is about 30 to 45 minutes, and they determine what type of level of care that individual needs, if any, So in the assisted living world, they have, usually 3 to 4 different levels of care, depending on the company, high level, medium, very independent, and same thing with medication management, so there's different levels, someone taking 0 to 6 medications, 7 to 11, and so forth. And that's how they also determine the costs for the care. What they do afterwards, they're supposed to reassess after 30 to 40 days. They'll say 30, but 30 to 40 days is when they reassess. Either the care needs go up or they go down. And they, it's like, people think, well, property taxes, they go up, they never go down, and same thing here, the care needs go up, never go down. No, I've seen it go down. It can happen. I think that the nurses today are a little bit aggressive with the care needs because they're assessing, they're interviewing, if you will, 30 to 45 minutes. They don't know that individual that much. They may look at all the clinical notes if someone is coming from being discharged from rehab, but they kind of come up with the plan, so hopefully. But it is part of it. It's part of the medication management. It's part of the assessment.
But can somebody manage their own medications, or do they have to be managed by the facility?
Thank you, Jill. That's my wife.
That was my question.
Yes, so someone can manage their own medication. Obviously, they have to be on the assisted living side. If it's on the memory care side, all bets are off, and memory care administers the medication. But on the assisted living side, what will happen is to save money, the nurse will test the individual, like what medications they're taking, and how often. So it depends on the individual, but yes, that can be waived. Yeah, that can be waived.
Yeah, so then I'll carry through what she said. I'm looking at what you said about what assisted living provides. And I had, my parents were in Ohio, they lived in a step down community. They were independent living, but I always maintained them
be a social worker on the premises, may not. If there's a social worker, they may be there a couple of days a week, but there's no nursing team. So independent, you can bring help from the outside, a certified home health aide that I mentioned earlier, to help with that. But certified home health aides are not allowed to administer medication. You know, I would always get that when I had my home care company. Why can't, you know, we're paying all this money and why can't the home health aide administer medication? That's just not the law. It violates their license, right? What they're there to do is to remind, you know. So what I tell families is, on the independent side, or even at home, is to have maybe 2 weeks worth of medication in a pill box already set up. You know, that's important, you know, but I'm referring more to senior housing, you know. Now, there is also continuing care retirement communities, the CCRCs, like the Fellowships, the Cedar Crest, the Winchester Gardens. There's quite a few. There's down South Jersey as well. They also have graduated, you know, steps, you know, independent living, assisted living. They have the rehab, and then they have skilled nursing, small skilled nursing, essentially. So, but they're the same thing, you know, you would need to get help.
Yeah, so it's, independent, you're basically, you've now transitioned from a house to an apartment where other people are living and you have social activities with those other people perhaps?
Sometimes you can.
Depending on how it's set up.
Right, exactly.
You're on your own, you're able to take care of yourself completely, you do all the, you know, all of that.
Yeah, independent, you're basically on your own. I mean, depending on the place, you can come into the assisted living world, the section, I should say. But with help, if need be, you know, you can still remain in independent living. With that home care agency that you're working with, home health aid, yeah. Yes? No, so the question is basically, what's more expensive? Remaining at home care versus assisted living, right? I would answer that back 10 years ago, home care, no doubt about it. The rates that I gave you back then versus the rates today. And I'm just gonna go by living, right? I mean, hourly is what it is, it's still also expensive, right? I think we did the math, $400 a day times 30 days, that's $12,000 if it's a living, right? Assisted living pricing has gone up, but not as much as on the home care side. So in my opinion, and it depends on the individual, again, the care needs, there are some hidden gems out there, meaning assisted living companies, that the pricing is so favorable versus living at home, you know. And even independently as well, you know, like someone that goes into an assisted living that doesn't need all the bells and whistles. Assisted living today is a lot less expensive than remaining at home.
Because of,
Well,
because at home, you're still buying your own groceries, you're still, depending on what the rent is, but you're still paying your utilities, you're still paying your property taxes. Blah, 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 blah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's you're paying for
all
the
the
maintenance,
that
right?
you're getting for perhaps a little bit more per month, but it's
Right.
covering all of those other expenses that you still have at home.
Exactly, right. You're paying all the maintenance and the upkeep of the property as well, yeah. So I know some,
Yes.
yes, no, that's okay.
Is it still true, well, actually, what I want to know is what's the percentage of Medicaid beds in the facility? And is it still true, if you are ready to go on Medicaid and they don't have a bed for you, they can send you elsewhere?
So the question is whether it's still true about the Medicaid process within the assisted living community. And what the percentage is of the beds, apartments, I should say, residents. So typically it's 10% of the apartments in the assisted living is attributed to or available for Medicaid. So the key is, we talked about the 2-year spend down, right, of the assets. You spend down your assets, again, the minimum is 2 years, it can be 4 years, whatever the amount of assets that they have left. I always tell families a year before the assets are spent or depleted, you start talking to management, and you get it in writing, email, whatever the case may be, that you say, my loved one is going to be going on Medicaid, or we're going to be starting the Medicaid process. The reason why is these are companies, you know, and they're good companies, that they forecast which residents are going to be on Medicaid, upcoming for Medicaid, with the existing Medicaid pool, if you will. So it's 10% now. There are certain, I'll give an example, even Sunrise. Sunrise has 28 to 32 communities in the state of New Jersey. They're the largest, like I mentioned. But Sunrise in Morris Plains does not accept Medicaid. Sunrise in Westfield in Union County does not accept Medicaid. But other Sunrises, Sunrise in Randolph, Sunrise in Madison, Sunrise in Florham Park, which is Brighton Gardens, they accept Medicaid. So the key is 1 year before assets are depleted, you start talking to management about my loved one's going to be going on Medicaid. You want to make sure that there is a room available, you know. The way that they get around it, these companies, is that that individual may need to go into a shared room with a roommate. So that's how they kind of reap the costs with the government. And again, it depends on the assisted living. I mean, typically, when I say a shared room, it's not like a hospital setting where here are 2 beds and a restroom. No, you walk in, it's in a beautiful apartment, there's a common area, there's a kitchenette, the bathrooms. Some companies have 2 bathrooms, not all. And then there's 2 doors there, private, you know, bedroom, I should say. So it is private. They just share the common area. So hopefully I answered that.
Well, what happens if they don't have a bed for you?
Oh, that's right. You said you might have to go to another.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you. I like to work with the larger companies because of the Medicaid situation. I try not to work with a standalone company because of Medicaid. I'm conservative, so I want to be able to sleep better at night, and I kind of share that with my family, the families I work with. Because let's say, and I keep bringing up Sunrise, and I work with all of them, so, but let's say Sunrise in Madison is full. They've met the 10%. Well, you've got Florham Park, you've got Randolph, you can even go to Summit, which is not too far away. You've got other communities that are available. Will that happen? Have I ever seen that? Did someone got kicked to the curb? I have not.
I have.
You have? You'll have to share that, not here, but we can talk. And so, but here's the thing. The key is 1 year before you start talking to management. That's the key. And it's probably the best advice I can give everyone today is that 1 year before. And I always say, get it in writing, because you don't know if that executive director moves on. You know, people move on. Oh, so-and-so promised me that. And I remember a story way back, and I'm not going to mention, it was a place up in Persimmon, and they said, no, so-and-so promised me, and he's no longer here. Did you get it in writing? No.
So there is.
But I'd like to, privately talk to you. You won't have to, I don't want everybody to know
It's
that.
water over there.
Yeah, no, but I like that. It's important for me to know. That's great, yeah. It's a great question.
It's not a requirement that they find another facility for you. If they can't find a facility within the Sunrise group,
And if
they can
it's
basically
Sunrise.
tell you, here's the door.
Well, no, they'll work with you. They'll work with you to find another community within, reasonable area, you know, they'll work with you, you know. But again, if there's a standalones, they have the right to give you 30 days notice, you know. That's why I like the larger companies. And again, I probably said it a couple of times, there's no perfect place. But these are great, they're good companies, really good. You know? Yes, Richard, I think.
Well, I was just going to ask. We actually were looking at some places for my mom, who ultimately said, I think I'm staying where I am, which we were just as happy with. But I kind of got the impression that it almost felt like a seller's market, in the sense that the places we visited pretty strenuously wanted our business. One place in particular, my mom keeps getting phone calls from the woman with whom we interacted, who was a charming and lovely person, but my mom has stopped answering the calls.
Yeah.
Have things shifted a little bit in the wake of the pandemic, where things were bad in some facilities, to kind of make this a little bit better, an economic environment for people entertaining going in?
So, in a nutshell, are these assisted living companies salesy, if you will, right? You know, following up on the phone calls and the visit. That's their job. You know, it's unfortunate. I mean, because you're dealing with a loved one. It really is. I mean, when I work with my clients and I represent them, if you will, and again, my services are free, and these companies know me. They know not to bother my clients. I tell them. They'll even ask me, oh, can I have the phone number, the email, and so forth. And I say, no, you go through me. You know, but it's unfortunate. It is sales. You know, it's unfortunate. And I'm sorry that was like a bad taste.
It hasn't been, a burden that she can't.
Yeah.
It's just a little annoyance for her. Yeah.
And Richard, I think you have to be blunt and say, you know, that's it. We'll call you, you know, that kind of thing. But I never divulge, you know, my client's information unless, you know, I ask them, obviously, because of the privacy. But yeah, they do call. And I have to say, a lot of these places are full now, you know, especially memory care. Like sometimes I pull my hair out trying to find a good place for memory care. Because they're smaller units. There's like 22 to 30 residents within the assisted living world, within the assisted living company, I should say. So there's usually a waiting list, and on the assisted living side, you know, there's usually a couple of apartments available. But I tell families, you like the place, you know, put a deposit down, take it off the market, you know. It's refundable. That deposit is refundable until your loved one moves in. Then they place that deposit. You know, they cash the deposit.
But it's still more a seller's market than a buyer's market.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's the benefit. Again, it's me. You know, as a certified senior advisor, that they don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Any more questions now? Jill, do you have any questions? Oh, Audrey, yes.
So we have some state ministers and deacons here who are trying to help some of our people along in figuring out, you know, is this something that, you know, is needed in our community, you know, for certain individuals. How do you start that conversation with folks, and how do you, for you, like, how does that transition start in kind of talking through these things?
Yeah, so, you know, basically, how do you have a conversation with someone? It varies, right? It's a great question, you know, that's a great question. It varies, like, if there's, like, family members involved. I think you and I had someone, and I don't want to mention location because maybe someone might know, but they were in a different state, and we were working with the daughter, and mom was in the local area. And it was tough. It was hard having a conversation with the daughter who's in a different state and traveling back and forth. it's nice when there is family involved. It is, because, you know, it's nice when there's a power of an attorney that can make, or a medical power of attorney that can make decisions for their loved one. When it's just one individual and they don't have anyone, that's hard. It's hard. And you know, depending on their mental capacity, might have to get a guardianship and a process involved. Right? Am I correct, Joe? Yeah. So, yes?
Do you work with, senior attorneys?
I do,
Well,
yeah.
I don't mean old attorneys, I mean.
There's seniors too. There's elder care attorneys. Yes. Elder care attorneys. Yeah.
Take care of you.
So, I mentioned earlier that, and you may have come in after I mentioned it, but we're a resource. We work with a lot of different, you know, professionals in the industry. But yes, elder care attorneys are great to work with. I typically like to refer, you know, 2 or 3, and then you got to go with your gut, which one you feel comfortable. Some of them don't charge for an initial consultation. You have to ask them. You know, things change, or some do. You know, so but yes, there's some really good ones out there. You know, and it's worth talking to because they may come up with the planning side of your, you know, talking about your assets, you know, things that you didn't think about, you know, so. Yes?
Where does Visiting Nurse Association fit in? Because I live near the Morristown Visiting Nurse thing, and there's a sign that says one call and care forever.
The VNA, the Visiting Nurse Association here in Morristown. So I have a question. Did they downsize the one that's on the corner, not far from the one on South Street, right? That's South Street. Yeah, right on the corner of James Street. I haven't been there in a long time, but I mean, huge building, you know. But I think they downsized. But the VNA helps out a lot, you know, like visiting nurse, you know. So you know, like if there's wound care involved, even they also do home care as well. Their pricing is going to be different, you know, but they're like, well, I shouldn't say they're not. I think they are for profit. There's different VNAs out there. Like the VNA in Somerset is not associated with the one in Morristown.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if they're not for profit. You know, I think Morristown is for profit. I think Somerset is also for profit. But they're a great resource as well. You know, they like I said, they provide home care as well, and then the nurses come out to the home. Like in the assisted living world, a VNA, a visiting nurse, can come out to do wound care, because in the assisted living world, the nurses will not handle wound care. So that's where the VNA would come in, or patient care. You may have heard of that one as well. There's different types of nursing services. But wonderful organization.
All these places for profit, are there any that are not for profit?
Are there any, like, what do you mean, like in the assisted living world?
Yeah.
Oh, you got me stumped there. I'm trying to think, because I think they're all for profit, unless, I can't think of any that are not for
What
profit.
about the ones that are religiously based?
Which ones? I don't know.
Isn't there one in Basking Ridge? Or Basking Ridge, the
Fellowship of
Presbyterian? Yeah.
No, but actually, the fellowship. Yes, yeah, but, you know, it might be not-for-profit, but the costs, the prices are right up there, you know, so.
My dad was a Bristol Glen in Memphis.
A Bristol Glen, yeah.
And I 5 years ago, Bristol Glen.
But I'm sure it was the care level really high. Yeah, yeah.
But when you're in, it's only 5,000.
5,000.
But because it was religious based, we started to run out of money. They said, don't worry about it, just take your father's pension. They weren't going to go now.
That's great.
Which is a whole different vibe.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's working with them and communicating with them, you know.
Even when I sold the house, they said, don't worry about it, and we closed.
Wow.
They were very, very.
That's great to hear. Yeah, that's great.
I think the hard part though, is that we were in a crisis when we started to look for something, because we didn't come home.
Mm.
And in a lot of these places, you gotta walk in. It took us 3 months to find a place.
Yeah. Yeah, I typically, when I work with families, it depends on the family, but it could be within a week that we find something.
I would be happy with that.
Yeah, Emily and I typically don't like to tour more than 2 places in one day, because it's a lot. It's a lot for me. I can just imagine for my client. And you hear the same things that Richard just left with the salesperson talk. But 2 is a lot. I've done 3 in case of, there was an emergency that they had to place someone pretty quickly. And I know that sometimes I get this, and I'm talking more on the rehab side, someone gets discharged and a family will say, okay, the insurance is cutting off my loved one and now we're paying out a profit. And I'm like, don't worry. It's not the end of the world if you have to pay a couple more days out of pocket. You could also talk to the rehab center, to admissions, to see if it could be considered a respite stay. So the rate comes down. So there's ways of dealing with it. I said, look, we're gonna find the assisted living community. You're gonna have to pay that assisted living community regardless. You can now pay the skilled nursing or the rehab center, I should say. So yeah, if it's an extra $100, whatever the case may be, it's not the end of the world. You have a solution. Your loved one's not gonna be, kicked out or anything like that. So, yeah. It's, I didn't talk about long-term insurance. Does anyone have long-term insurance?
My parents do. They do. Well, my dad passed away, but my mom stayed up until 97.
Wow. So my wife and I, we just recently bought it 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago. I'm not a fan of long-term care insurance, I'll tell you. Every year, I think I mentioned I'm a planner, but in my 30s, 40s, 50s, I would look into, and we would talk to someone, and the prices were just astronomical, and I'm gonna retire one day, right? Our goal one day is to retire, and these prices, the premiums just keep going up, they keep escalating, like I can't afford this, But we found there's a new product that's been out now for a while. It's a hybrid, and it's whole life insurance. You get a $100,000 whole life insurance, and then there's a rider to it, and it's for the long-term care side of it. And that's the reason why you have to get the whole life in order to get that rider for the long-term care. And ours is it's $4,000 a month for each of us, so it's $8,000.
The benefit.
I'm sorry?
The benefit, not the.
The benefit, I'm sorry. I'm tired now. Right, the benefit, right? Thank you. The benefit is $8,000 for a couple. You may think that that's a lot, but not in New Jersey, right? And so it's fixed for life. But so is our premium, it's fixed for life. But remember, if we need it in 20 years, 25 years from now, that $8,000 doesn't have that same buying power, if you will, because of inflation, unfortunately. So maybe if we move out of the state, maybe to Florida, we're okay, but here in New Jersey, $8,000 for a couple, that's not a lot, but it's something, So, but yes.
So how much does it vary? You mentioned state of New Jersey. How much does it vary to a different state? New Jersey versus, say, Maryland or Delaware, or for long-term care?
Oh,
for assisted living care first.
For assisted living care, okay, yeah. It varies, so every state is different. New Jersey's very high, one of the highest probably. My my father-in-law, we placed him in a nice assisted living community down in Florida. Jill, how much did we pay? Like $4,000, but it was huge. It was like that apartment. If it was here in New Jersey, easily $12,000, easily $12,000 a month, and paying $4,000 in Florida. But there's a catch. Here in New Jersey, after you again spend down the assets, Medicaid will pick up the cost, right? In Florida, they only pick up a portion of it.
Very tiny portion. Very small portion.
Very small, yeah, a very small portion. I forget what it was, like 800, it was, or maybe 1,300.
Yeah, I think it was.
Very, very small portion. And so what do? You know, family has to come into, you know, paying the difference, or you have to go to a skilled nursing facility, you know. So every state is different. I mean, I know like in North Carolina, I can't give you exact numbers, but it's much cheaper in North Carolina. Same thing with PA, much cheaper. But they don't accept Medicaid after you spend down the assets. So you have to be careful. Once you spend down your assets, what do?
Right. What about the state of New York, do you know?
Totally different market. I don't know that market very well, but I know it's different as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Say you're just starting this process, because it's inevitable that it's probably going to happen. Is the best place to start with an elder law attorney to get everything in order and then see you and find a place?
So the question is, what's the best way of going, the planning part of it? I think it's a combination of both. You know, seeing someone like myself, a certified senior advisor, and also seeing an elder care attorney as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Like there'll be things that I'll notice that I'll say, no, an elder care attorney is the appropriate way to go. But again, like I said, I'm a planner. You should also plan. You know, it's like having insurance, like I said. You know.
Regardless of this, everybody should have a will and power of attorney and a living will, so they should have seen or go to see a trust and estates / elder law attorney. I'm a trust and estates attorney,
That's the disclosure. Yeah, it's important to have all your documents all in a row, you know, and it's important to review it once a year. We review ours every year.
You mentioned the cost on skilled nursing home was between 11 and 16?
Roughly, yeah.
What's the projection for the future?
Oh,
5 to 10 years.
but I'm sorry, I just want to get back. I know you said the projection 11 to 16, rather than I said 11 to 16. It depends on the skilled nursing facility. I don't know how they come up with that 11,000. I've seen as low as 11,000, and then I've seen as high as 16,000. It's just cost of business that they charge, you know. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry.
So, do you have any thoughts about what the projection costs are going to be?
You know, when you think you've seen it all, you know, you know, when the pandemic hit back in 2020, it's almost 5 years now, right? March will be 5 years. There was a problem, right? Caregivers were not allowed, certified home health aides were not allowed to go into the assisted living communities. They just completely shut down, you know. They had to follow the protocols, right? Then we lost a lot of caregivers in that time. They just didn't want to do that anymore. They were scared, you know. And so the demand kept coming up. Eventually, you know, as things got better, the demand was there, whether it's in the home or in the assisted living or even in the skilled nursing. The demand was there, and we couldn't find a lot of qualified caregivers. And so pricing, to make it attractive, pricing went up because they had to compensate those caregivers, you know? So to project, who knows? My gosh, I don't know where we go from here, to be honest, because I think on the assisted living side, could it go up more? Well, every year there's the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, right? And back then, before the pandemic, I would tell families 3 to 5%, because they'll say, what's the increase every January, in January? And today, I say 6 to 8, and I say that conservatively, because there might be some companies that are a little bit more. So it's 6 to 8% right now, so who knows, you know?
When you do go into one of those facilities, are you locked into a set amount for a time period, or is it reset in calendar? So if you moved in November, you can reset in January, or?
So the question is, if you move in October, November, like the tail end of the year, would they increase for January? No, they better not, because you just moved in, you know, basically. So they should honor, and a lot of companies do honor, you know, you're already grandfathered in, there won't be any increase for 2025 or in 2026, you know. Some companies will say, we have a rate lock freeze for 2 years, depending on the company, right? So, yeah. Any other? I got the motion that, you know, again, Beacon Senior Advisors, you know, you have our brochure, any questions, you know, and I'd love to hear from you, you know, afterwards or whatever, but curious about that. But if you have any questions, or if you need a referral for senior care plan, thank you for having me. Hopefully it's not another 7 years. Thank you.
Appreciate being here. And if everyone would just sign your name on the little sign over there, just so that I can keep numbers tracking. And also, if you're interested in more things like this, let me know. You can put a little note on there as well. So thank you for being here. My group, Woody has always said that. Woody has always said that. Like, we just have a group. Yeah, just like, yeah.
Meet you up front.
Yeah, there you go.
Out front of here, honey? Okay. Never mind.
Meet you up front.